There is a specific kind of fear that never announces itself. It doesn't arrive as panic. It doesn't arrive as paralysis. It arrives quietly, wearing the face of preparation. You tell yourself you're not ready yet, that the work needs more time, that the world isn't ready for what you're building, that you'll launch when it's perfect, when you're stronger, smarter, more certain. And the months pass, and the years pass, and the work sits in a drawer, or a folder, or a corner of your mind where you visit it sometimes and feel both proud and ashamed at the same time. What you are experiencing is not procrastination. It is fear in its most intelligent disguise. The samurai had a name for this enemy, not the enemy outside, the one with a sword, the enemy inside, the one with a voice. They called it Kyofu no Ori, the cage of fear. And they understood something about it that most people today have completely forgotten. The cage is never locked from the outside. It is always locked from within. This is the story of a man who spent years building a beautiful cage and called it discipline, and the Japanese warrior who showed him how to open the door. Who was Miyamoto Musashi? Before the story, you need to understand who Musashi was, because his life is the argument. Miyamoto Musashi was born in 1584 in feudal Japan. By the time he was 13 years old, he had fought and killed his first opponent in single combat. By the time he was 30, he had survived 60 duels without a single defeat against Japan's greatest swordsman. He was the most feared warrior of his era. And yet, the work Musashi is remembered for today is not his sword technique. It is his writing. In the final years of his life, living alone in a cave called Reigando, Musashi wrote the Book of Five Rings, a text on strategy, courage, and the nature of the mind under pressure that is still studied by military commanders, executives, and artists 5 centuries later. He was not a warrior who occasionally wrote. He was a man who understood that the sword and the brush required the same thing. Fudōshin, an immovable mind. Mushin, a mind with no obstruction. And above all, Kai, the vital energy that only moves when fear is absent. 6 principles from his understanding of courage. 6 ways the samurai conquered the enemy within, so that nothing outside could ever truly defeat them. The man who was almost ready. His name was Daniel. Daniel Osei was 34 years old, and he had been almost ready for 6 years. He lived in London, in a 1-bedroom flat in Peckham that smelled of paint and cold coffee. The walls were covered in canvases, some finished, most not. Sketchbooks filled 2 shelves. A laptop permanently open on a half-written artist statement he had started and abandoned 11 times. On paper, Daniel was a graphic designer. He worked freelance, good enough clients, decent rates. He paid his rent. He kept his head above water. But at night, after the client work was done, he worked on his work. The paintings, the illustrated stories, the visual world he had been building in private for 6 years that no one had ever seen in full. Not his friends, not his family, not the internet. He told himself he was protecting it, that he needed to develop it further before sharing it, that the world was brutal and dismissive and he needed to be prepared. What he didn't tell himself, what he couldn't yet say clearly, was that he was terrified. Not of failure exactly, something more specific. He was terrified of being seen trying and not being enough. Failure you can blame on bad timing, bad luck, a world that didn't understand. But to show your truest work, The work that comes from the deepest part of who you are, and have it met with silence, or worse, with pity. That was a different kind of wound entirely. One he didn't know if he could survive, so he prepared instead. He took another online course on composition. He studied artists he admired. He refined his technique. He told himself that when he was ready, truly ready, he would share it. 6 years later, he was more skilled than he had ever been, and further from launching than ever. The preparation had become the destination. The refining had become the hiding. His older sister visited one Sunday and walked around the flat looking at the work on the walls. She stopped in front of a large canvas, a figure standing at the edge of a dark forest, a single lantern in their hand. The trees ahead vast and unknown. "Daniel," she said, "this is extraordinary. Why isn't this anywhere?" He gave her the usual answer, "It's not ready." She looked at him for a long moment. "You said that 4 years ago about a different painting." He didn't have a response to that. That same evening, he went for a walk. No destination, just moving. His feet took him east, through the market streets, past the food stalls closing for the night, until he found himself standing in front of a small gallery space he had walked past 100 times but never entered. It was called Reigando, a name he didn't know the meaning of. The lights were still on inside. He went in. The space was small and spare. Clean white walls, perhaps 20 pieces hung with careful distance between them. The work was unlike anything Daniel had seen in a gallery. Not abstract, not conceptual, not performing difficulty. It was figurative, muscular, deeply Japanese in its sensibility, but utterly contemporary. Warriors in motion, landscapes at the edge of storm, figures alone in vast spaces, small but not fragile. Behind a plain wooden desk at the back sat an old man, perhaps 70, perhaps older. He had the stillness of someone who had been in the same posture for decades and had stopped noticing it. His name was Hiroshi. He had come to London from Kyoto 40 years ago. He had been a printmaker, then a painter, then a teacher, and now he ran this small gallery in Peckham, which showed work he believed in and sold nothing he didn't. Daniel spent 40 minutes looking at everything before he spoke. "How long did these take?" Hiroshi looked up. "Which ones?" "All of them." The old man smiled. "The making, weeks. Some, months. The deciding to make them, years." Daniel sat down on the bench against the wall. He didn't mean to say what he said next. It just came out. "I have 6 years of work that no one has ever seen." Hiroshi didn't look surprised. He didn't offer comfort. He simply asked, "Why?" And Daniel, who had never answered that question honestly, heard himself say, "Because I'm afraid." Hiroshi was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Good. Now we can talk." Principle 1. Kakusei, the awakening. The samurai, Hiroshi began, understood that courage is not the absence of fear. That is a mistake modern people make. They believe the courageous feel nothing. The samurai knew something more precise. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act in the presence of it. But before that decision can be made, something must happen first. The samurai called it Kakusei, awakening. You must see the fear clearly before you can move past it. Most people, he continued, never name their fear accurately. They say, "I'm not ready." They say, "The timing isn't right." They say, "I need more practice." These are not lies exactly, but they are translations. They are what the fear says when it wants to sound reasonable. What is the true name of what you are afraid of, Daniel? Daniel thought about it. Really thought. I'm afraid of showing my real work and having it prove that I'm not who I think I am. Hiroshi nodded slowly. That is precise. That is the fear. Now you can work with it. The samurai warrior, before battle, did not tell himself there was no danger. He named the danger exactly. He said, I may die today. This enemy may be better than me. I may fail in front of everyone who is watching. He named it all. And then he asked himself a single question. Even knowing all of this, is the path worth walking? If the answer was yes, he walked. And because he had already named the worst and accepted it, the fear had no more power over his body. It had already done its damage in his mind. There was nothing left for it to steal. Daniel, you have been afraid of a verdict. But the verdict is already happening. Every year you don't show the work, the world has already decided, not that you failed, but that you didn't try. Which verdict would you rather live with? Daniel had no answer, but something shifted. That night he went home and did something he had not done in 6 years. He photographed 12 pieces, just photographed them. He didn't post them anywhere. He just looked at them on a screen, outside the context of his flat, as a stranger might see them. They were good, not perfect, but genuinely, unmistakably good. The fear had been telling him they weren't ready, but looking at them clearly, he realized the work had been ready for years. It was only he who hadn't been. Principle 2. Fudōshin, the immovable mind. The second time Daniel visited the gallery, Hiroshi made tea. The samurai trained something they called Fudōshin, he said. Immovable mind. Not rigid, immovable. The difference is important. A rigid mind resists everything. An immovable mind absorbs pressure without changing its core. A tree in a storm is not rigid. It bends completely. But its roots do not move. That is Fudōshin. The creative person's version of this is simple but hard. You must be able to receive criticism, silence, rejection, and misunderstanding, and let none of it move you from the work itself, because they will come. Not might come, will come. The first response to most honest work is either silence or misunderstanding. That is not evidence that the work is wrong. It is evidence that the work is ahead. Musashi fought 60 duels. He was not always clean. He was not always graceful. Some victories were close. Some were brutal. What never changed was his decision to show up for the next one. Your Fudōshin as an artist is this. You decide, before you publish anything, that no single response will determine whether you continue. Not the praise and not the criticism. The decision to continue is made in advance, before the result, and it is not revisited based on what comes back. Daniel thought of every artist he had admired who had ever described their early years. The rejection, the silence, the work that came out before the audience arrived. Almost without exception, the work that broke through had been made long before anyone was watching. So I should not care what people think. Hiroshi shook his head. You should listen to what people think. Carefully, you should learn from it. But you should not let it determine your worth or your continuation. Those two things are yours. They belong to the code, not to the crowd. Principle 3. Ki, the vital force that moves only in freedom. The samurai understood energy, Hiroshi said. They called it ki, the vital force that flows through everything you do. When ki is present, the sword moves with precision and power. When ki is blocked, The movement is slow, effortful, wrong. What blocks Kai? Fear blocks Kai. Self-consciousness blocks Kai. The watching of yourself while you work. The monitoring, the judging, the asking, is this good enough? Even while the brush is still moving. This is what turns living work into dead work. You have been watching yourself for 6 years, Daniel. Every stroke judged before it dries. Every piece evaluated against an imaginary standard. The key cannot flow under that weight. Musashi wrote about this in The 5 Rings. He said the mind that is occupied with the opponent cannot also be occupied with the sword. You can only do one at a time. Fight or watch yourself fighting. The ones who survive are the ones who forget themselves entirely. For the creative person, this means there must be a time when the work is made without the critic present. The critic has a role, but its role comes after, in editing, in selection, in refinement. During the making itself, the critic must be sent away. Daniel recognized this immediately. Every piece he had ever been proudest of had been made in a state he could only describe as forgetting. Hours disappearing. The work pulling him forward rather than him pushing it. But those states had become rarer as the stakes in his mind had grown higher. He had confused quality with anxiety. He had thought the critical watching made the work better, but it had only made the work slower and smaller. The best work came from absence of self, and absence of self required courage. Principle 4. Zanshin, sustained awareness after the act. Most people, Hiroshi said, make their courage available only at the beginning. They summon enormous will to start something, to post the first piece, to launch the first project, to take the first step. And then, when the response is less than they hoped, the will collapses. The samurai concept of Zanshin addresses this. It means sustained awareness, not just before and during the fight, after. The warrior who wins a duel and immediately relaxes is vulnerable. The battle is over, but the battlefield is not yet safe. For the creative person, Zanshin means this. The courage required to share work is not a one-time event. It is a practice that must be maintained through the discomfort of being seen over time. The first post requires courage. So does the 10th. So does the 100th, when you have a following and the stakes feel higher. Zanshin is the decision to remain present and continue, not just once, but indefinitely. This is what separates those who build a body of work from those who make a single brave gesture and then retreat. The brave gesture is not enough. The practice must become identity. Musashi did not win 60 duels with 60 individual acts of bravery. He built a practice of courage so deep it became automatic. By the final duels, he reportedly arrived late without armor, carrying a wooden sword, not out of arrogance, but because the fear had been so thoroughly trained out of him that it simply no longer occupied space in his preparation. That is the destination, not fearlessness. A practiced relationship with fear that no longer allows it to make the decisions. Principle 5. Shoshin, beginner's mind. There is a paradox at the center of the creative fear, Hiroshi said. The better you become, the more you have to lose. The more you have invested in a reputation, even a private interior reputation, the more carefully you protect it. And so mastery, which should liberate, sometimes creates a new and more sophisticated cage. The Zen tradition calls the antidote Shoshin, beginner's mind. The willingness to approach the work as if for the first time, without the accumulated weight of everything you believe you know, everything you believe you have already proven. Musashi, late in his life, described his own mastery this way: "I have no weapons but what I see before me. I know no technique except what the moment requires." He had trained so thoroughly that he could return to simplicity, could approach each encounter as if he had never fought before, without the ego of accumulated victories protecting or constraining him. For you, Daniel, this means releasing the expectation that the work must justify 6 years of private development. It does not need to arrive fully formed and undeniable. It can arrive exactly as it is, honest, incomplete, alive, and that is enough. The beginner is not ashamed of not knowing. The beginner's only job is to begin. Principle 6. Ichigo Ichie, one time, one meeting. The final principle, Hiroshi said, is perhaps the most important for the modern creative. Ichigo Ichie. One time, one meeting. Each moment is singular. It will never occur again in exactly this form. The samurai understood this about battle. There is no practice run. There is only the actual engagement, which arrives once and then is gone. Every piece of work you make is Ichigo Ichi, not a rehearsal for the work you will eventually share, not a step toward the work you are building toward. It is itself, complete, irreplaceable. The 6 years of work in your flat, Daniel, those are not preparations. They are the thing itself. And every day you keep them hidden, you deny them their Ichigo Ichi. You deny them their singular moment of meeting the world. The samurai did not wait until they had perfected the sword before using it. They used it. And in the using, it became what it needed to become. Release the work, Hiroshi said. Not because it is ready, because the moment is. 3 weeks after his first visit to the gallery, Daniel posted 12 pieces online. He did not write an elaborate artist statement. He wrote 4 sentences. 6 years of work, made in private, released today. I have been afraid of this. I am still afraid. I am posting anyway. He closed the laptop and went for a walk. He did not check his phone for 2 hours. When he returned, there were more responses than he had received on anything he had ever shared before. Not all of it was praise. Some of it was silence. Some of it was the particular kind of engagement that arrives when something genuine reaches someone who needed it. But it was the message from a young woman in Lagos that he kept coming back to. I have been hiding my writing for 4 years. I don't know you, but something about seeing you post this gave me permission. I published my first piece an hour ago. Thank you. Daniel sat with that for a long time. He had been afraid of the verdict, but the verdict was not about him at all. It never had been. The work, when released, did not belong to him anymore. It belonged to whoever needed it. That was what the courage was for. Not for himself. For the person on the other side of the fear. He went back to Hiroshi's gallery the following Saturday. I posted, he said. Hiroshi nodded. I know. I saw. It wasn't as bad as I thought. It never is, Hiroshi said, but that is not the point. The point is that you did it frightened. That is always the point. Anyone can act without fear. The practice is to act with it, to feel it fully and walk through it anyway. That is what Musashi meant by courage. Not the absence of the enemy, the decision to face him regardless. He paused. He looked at Daniel the way someone looks at a person who has just arrived somewhere they were always meant to be. Now do it again, he said. Next week, and the week after, and the week after that. Courage practiced becomes courage owned, and courage owned becomes who you are. And when something becomes who you are, You no longer need to remember to be brave. You simply are. What this means for you. Musashi's 6 principles do not make the fear disappear. They give you a different relationship with it. Kakusei, name the fear exactly, not the polite translation. The true thing underneath. Fudōshin, decide in advance that no single response will determine your worth or your continuation. The decision belongs to you, not to the crowd. Key, create without the critic present. Send it away during the making. It can return for editing, not before. Zanshin, sustain the courage. Not once, not twice. As a practice that becomes identity. Shoshin, release the weight of what you believe you have already proven. Begin again each time, as if for the first time. Ichigo Ichie, this moment is singular. The work you are holding is not preparation, it is the thing itself. Give it its moment of meeting the world. And understand this. The work you are protecting by not sharing it is not being protected. It is being withheld from the person who needs it. The courage is not for you. It is for them. The samurai did not pick up the sword for himself. He picked it up for something larger than himself. So do you. In the comments, tell me, what work have you been holding back? What would you release if you knew someone needed it? Self-conquest. The conquest begins within.